You're watching National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasts, 70 shows, and a 3.5-star rating on Roku TV. Yes, sir. Remember that, folks. We're going to be right back after a couple messages from our sponsors. Jay will hook us up with the Oakland A's of the 1970s. But first, a couple messages. Stick right with us. Check out nessp.info for direct links and deals on the site Bet Us for 125% off your first 3 deposits in NFL and college odds for upcoming games, Major League Baseball and NBA futures, and boxing wagers. Also, check out Fanatics, sportswear for your favorite teams, and also network merchandise, retro, Northeast Streaming Sports, National Streaming Sports, Big Football, and the Mac and Jack Sports Show t-shirts. Coffee mugs are coming soon. Check it out.
Yo, you already know it's your boy LCF. I just tore it up for Zodiac TV. Shout out DJ Epps. Oh man, it was great, man. We did an interview. Then I hit the stage. The crowd was amazing. They gave me all their energy. I gave them that energy back. Linked up with some dope artists in the building. Zodiac TV, man. Hey, we gonna celebrate for the rest of the night, you know what I mean? With some Bel Air. Shout out my nigga Rose. Holla at your boy. I mean, boss shit, you already know. But we tore it up, man. Performance was amazing. The set was amazing. Zodiac TV, shout out y'all boys, man. Thank you for having me. You already know I'm gonna come back. Your boy finna come back. You know what I mean? Go to work, did it all for nothing. Make sure y'all go get that single, available on all platforms. Let's go.
My girl just told me that she pregnant, we expecting the shit. So I had to buckle down, accelerate, no slowing down. Some people, that's why I don't come around.
Well, I just want to say for the record, in case anyone goes back in the future and gets a video of this show, I have no idea the sponsors that Mac gets. I had no idea what was coming on at all.
Well,
you know, Mac,
before you
I didn't know what was coming on.
At least let me finish the read. That is Zodiac Global TV for the best in sports and music. It's for a new generation, Jack. And I know you like that hip hop stuff. So anyway, good morning, Richard. Glad to have you in. As you see, as we are trying to expand our horizons here on National Streaming Sports.
I'm from a different generation. That's got to get pointed out.
I would have Frank Sinatra's commercial on, but he's passed away. But anyway, James, we're going to have you start rolling here, and let me start you off right. And we've got a few things we want to get to, folks, today. James is going to cover it with the Oakland A's, and of course, as you know, that gentleman right there, their star offensive player, anyway, Reggie Jackson.
Yes, sir. Starting with the Oakland A's, man. Oakland A's. The origin of the Oakland A's is not in Oakland. It happened to be in Philadelphia. Philadelphia way back in the 20s. And it was by the owner, Connie Mack. Connie Mack had the team, and they went to 9 World Series, I think. It went to 5 in 9 years or something like that. And they had good success early on. And he did a dismantle of the team, and they had even better success. But then at some time around 1950 is when he retired. And then that's when the downhill of the Oakland A's that we all know now, or that I knew back in the early 80s, I just knew in the 90s, they just weren't good. They weren't good in 1950, and they were under new ownership under Arnold Johnson, I believe. And it just went even further down from there. I think they had last winning season they had was 1952. And so in 1960, it went under an insurance salesman or an insurance mogul, as they said in the past. Charles O. Finley. He ended up buying the team, and he had an agenda. He wanted the team to be better than what they were. So they moved out to Kansas City, and they were the Kansas City Athletics at the time. And then maybe this is when he started building the team. He became the general manager. He was a very tyrannical type of guy. He was very closely. He became the general manager himself, and they ended up getting some excellent players, some players that would be like a mainstay of their winning success. We're talking about Catfish Hunter, Bert Campaneris. They drafted Rick Monday. They got Reggie Jackson, Joe Rudy, Sal Bando, also Gene Tennis. A lot of these guys were just like a core group that stayed together, and they were in their average age or between like 22 to 24. So it was a very young team. And around 68 and 69, those 2 years is when they got their first winning seasons again since 1952, and their first two back-to-back. And so during that time, Finley had fired for 10 years, 10 different managers. He fired all of them up to Dave. Was it John McNamara? And when it came to after John McNamara is when Dick Williams came in. Dick Williams was a no-nonsense guy, and he was a very aggressive style manager. And with his management, his mantra was just pitch the ball and catch the ball. Just pitch and catch the ball. So virtually they were about defense. And in 1971 is when they started off. They kicked it off right, man. They won 101 games that season. They were topping the stats in runs and that's the year that Vida Blue won 24 games, lost 8 games. He won 24 games, got the Cy Young Award, and he also got AL MVP. This team was just dominant up until they met. Of course, last Saturday I talked about the Baltimore Orioles and how good they were. This is the team that beat them in 1971 in the ALCS, and they swept them. Did they stop them? They kept Dick. Dick stayed on staff even after the firing of 10 managers in 10 years. Dick stayed on staff. They came back in 1972, and they still were great. Let me see. I'm trying to think who they ended up playing again. No, excuse me. They got to the ALCS. They won their AL West again, and they got to ALCS, and they played the Detroit Tigers. They had to go 5 games against Detroit. That was a pretty close series, but they closed them out at the end, and they met up with Cincinnati Reds. And what's funny about this is because there was a moniker about this series. It was called the Hares versus the Big Squares. It's because when you look back in 72, Reggie Jackson was one of the guys that went against the grain and grew his facial hair out. And Charles O. Finley had a strong policy of no facial hair. So he went against the grain and had a full beard and wouldn't get rid of it. So Charles O. Finley he said, for any guy that grows their mustache out, I'll give you $300. $300 today, that'd be nothing. I wouldn't grow out a mustache for $500. I mean, I just grow it for whatever, but they grew their mustache out for $300. That was a lot in 1972. And if you think back to the picture specifically, Raleigh Fingers had a handlebar mustache. He said he didn't grow it out just for looks. He just grew it out because he wanted $300. But turns out his wife ended up liking it, so he ended up keeping it. But all of them ended up staying with their facial hair, and so this is why. And they had long hair, and so they were just a little wild and crazy. That's this team. So, and they called the Cincinnati the Big Squares, with Pete Rose and a few others on that team. But they went up against this team, and they went a full game. They won the full 7 series, man. It was a tight series, but they still ended up closing it out at the end. I'm trying to think who was the was it? No, it wasn't. Was it Catfish Hunter? someone got a. I'm trying to. No, it wasn't Catfish. I can't
Raleigh
think.
Fingers was in the seventh game. He was one pitching to Pete Rose.
Raleigh Fingers. He closed it out.
Yeah.
And the last hit was by Pete Rose. And again, this is someone who said he can't really think about this series now because he ended up. He was the one right at the end that they got shut out. He hit the fly out, and it just really hurt him, and he really couldn't think about it. But the MVP of that game or that series was Gene Tennis, the second string catcher. He wasn't even the starter. He became the starter of that series, but he ended up hitting 4 home runs and hitting a few RBIs. And he hit his last home run was in the 5th game. It was in the 5th game, and it seemed like they were the Red Sox came back to make it an even series, but that's when again the A's ended up winning the series. Going to 73, they looked like they weren't going to try to repeat. They weren't that great in the beginning, but they righted the ship around August, and they had a good run. And they got to the ALCS again, and they met up again with the Baltimore Orioles. They beat them handily and got to surprisingly the former Miracle Mets. The Mets made it again. They off of 83 win season, just barely above I forgot the second team that they were above, but they got to the World Series again with Tom Seaver, and they went 7 games. And this is the series, the first time that the Oakland A's were down. This is the only series of the 3 World Series that they got to that they were actually down 3-2. And they ended up coming back and winning that series and shutting out the Mets with Catfish. I believe Catfish Hunter shut them out, and he had a shutout game, complete game.
No. There's no shutout in game 6 or 7. The A's won game 7.
That was 74. That was
73. Oh, I thought we were talking about 73.
No, you're right. I'm talking. I'm saying you're right. I agree with you. It wasn't. If I'm thinking that Catfish Hunter closed out 74. He closed out 74. 70. Was it 74?
Well, in 73. Well, there was a controversy still with the Mets athletic series in 73. You're right that the Mets swept 3 games to 2 in the World Series. And a lot of people, myself included, felt they should have held Tom Seaver out to game 7. But they pitched him game 6 against Catfish Hunter, and they lost that game, the Mets 3-1. But psychologically, would have meant a lot to the Mets going back to Oakland up 3-2, knowing you had Tom Seaver for game 7 no matter what. So even if you lost game 6, you had your ace going in game 7. So when the Mets lost game 6, I don't want to say they were cooked, but mentally now they went from a 3-2 lead to underdogs going into game 7. And it was a mistake. Tug McGraw questioned it tremendously. Other players did. Tom Seaver felt the move was fine with him. You know, it was Yogi Berra who was the manager who made that decision. But I don't like it to this day, that decision that Berra made.
Yeah, there was a hell of a controversy over that too. There really was. In fact, a lot of people were upset with that move. And as Jack said, you're going to be Catfish Hunter. Not that Cleaver wasn't as good as Catfish Hunter. It's just that Catfish Hunter was very good at that point in his career.
Right.
You go back and you got Tom Seaver there. Who are they going to match him up against? I don't know if Vida Blue would have won. I don't know who would have won game 7.
Catfish would have won game 6 anyway for Oakland, and he beat Seaver 3-1.
Right.
But assuming Oakland would have won that game 6 anyway, just mentally it would have meant so much for Seaver to take the mound in game 7 for the Mets. I mean, it had to do something to them psychologically when they lost game 7.
What if Vida Blue was game 7 pitcher against Tom Seaver? That still would have been a hell of a matchup.
He wasn't the same pitcher by the Blue that he was in 71. Okay. But it wasn't like a comparable ace. Catfish Hunter and Seaver were very comparable at that point. They were very evenly matched, as far as being aces go. But Mets probably would have lost the series anyway with Seaver going game 7. You'd think. But who knows what would have happened had they held him out.
Right.
And up to that point, it was just mostly pitching. I mean, it wasn't like they were like high scoring. I'm just trying to think of that. From what I read, that Catfish Hunter had a complete game. He won a complete game in Game 7. So maybe it wasn't a shutout. Is that not true?
What we talk? Well, I know we won 3-1 Game 6 against Steve in the '73 World Series.
Okay.
I don't remember what game. I don't remember what happened actually with the following year when the A's beat the Dodgers in 5 games. But I do remember this. Charles Finley, he was a little bit of an innovator. He took this guy called Herbie Washington, who wasn't a baseball player. He was like a track star, and he turned him into a pinch runner. And he was and they used him in the World Series, and the Dodger reliever Mike Marshall picked him off. His designated pinch runner. So there was a lot of criticism over that, with Herbie Washington getting picked off, and But Charles Finley, like you were mentioning, James, something I think you hinted he was a little tight with money. He would get mad at players if they would take a batting practice ball and toss it into the stands. He tried to every penny. And with By the Blue was one of these rookie sensations in 1971. I mean, he had an amazing year, but he was so charismatic. He was the biggest thing in baseball that year. And By the Blue was making $15,000 a year as a rookie. So the next year, it's time to give By the Blue his money, his contract. There was no such thing as free agency. So By the Blue wanted to get like a little over $100,000. He said something like $115,000 he wanted. And Charles Finley said he was going to give him $50,000, case closed. And he said, Blue, either you take my offer, you're out of baseball. And that kind of helped, that statement helped lead to the reserve clause where owners could just tell players what they would get. Eventually, Blue had to settle. He came in at about $63,000, like a couple of incentives. But he was never quite the same pitcher again. I mean, he wasn't that sensational standout. He was good for a number of years. But that was about it.
Yeah, I read. Sorry,
Charles Finley was a salesman. He was a marketer. He was, I mean, this is where he strived for. I mean, he was a pretty good evaluation of talent. I mean, the A's really had the most colorful uniforms in the early 70s. They were green and yellow, right? No teams had colors like that. They were the white and that. He was all about image, is what Charles Finley was. But when it came to paying his players, as Jack said, he was one of the worst. And 74, after they win that World Series, everybody starts leaving, right? So, I mean.
Well, they had a reserve clause. They were allowed to leave as free agents after the first time.
There was a lot of arbitration before that. And then eventually, like you said, the reserve clause came in. And then allowed the players free agency. I mean, it wasn't until then these guys were averaging like 20,000+ a year. Like you said, 15,000 for By the Blue. That was horrific, I guess, in the 70s, man.
Well, Finley was looking at it. By the way, just let me backtrack. The Oakland Athletics came into existence in the 1960s. They were Kansas City. They moved from Kansas City. It's not the be confused with the Philadelphia Athletics. But what happened with Charles Finley he tried to sell these players to other teams. I'm not talking about the assets for money. He looked at it as a business. So I can get so much money by just giving you this player. And he tried to sell off all the star players. And the commissioner, Bowie Kuhn, stepped in. That's not in the best interests of baseball. You're getting nothing in return, but money. You're just lining your pockets. That's all you're doing. And they didn't allow that, to take place.
I mean, if you think about it, right? Catfish Hunter, now, this is a little quick thing about Finley. Finley had a pitcher. Catfish Hunter was outdoorsman. He hunted and he fished. And he's the one who came up with Catfish Hunter. His name was Jim Hunter. And from then on, and Catfish agreed that would be his nickname. From then on, he was known as Catfish Hunter. And they had a picture of him he said he found Catfish Hunter with a line of catfish on a fishing line because he was fishing all day. So I mean, this is what Charles Finley did. You talk about the mustache and the hair. He did everything for image and everything for the wow marketing thing. But the A's, eventually you start losing your players like that, and you just fall into the abyss, right? So sort of like what Florida does, Jack, right? Florida or some of the teams down in Florida do. They'll get them young guys, get good, and they get rid of them. So,
but Finley was said to be a really bad guy. Okay, I mean, maybe that's being a little harsh. Not a nice guy, put it that way by any means. If you looked at some of his actions in the '73 World Series, he had a second baseman called Mike Andrews.
Yeah.
I don't think he was their full-time guy. He was plugged in or whatever, but he made 2 errors. So Finley just cut him from the team during the World Series. And there was a rebellion, and the commissioner's office insisted Finley put him back on the roster because everyone was ticked off that Mike Andrews was cut, from Oakland. And
it's not how he didn't just cut him, Jack. He made a fake injury and everything. He tried to get him off. Yeah. And so
what he did, I don't remember. Yeah, enlighten me on that. So what did he do? He faked
so he put him on the disabled list, and he created he concocted a fake injury, and the guy even he said that's not true. It's a total lie. Mike Andrews said that's just one total lie, and the commissioner, not just the players, but the commissioner had to jump in and flip that back and put the kid back on the team, and he was so mad about that. Finley was so mad about that he gave them a ring with no diamond in it when they won the World Series.
Oh, wow. No, I think it's more like Finley trying to save money on the diamond. But that's a good point. But in reality, he cut him. But you're right. I forgot all that. Thanks for reminding me. So Dick Williams was their manager in '72 when they won the World Series. In '73 when they won the World Series. But after what Finley tried to do to Mike Andrews, Dick Williams finally had enough, and he didn't come back in 1974. He went elsewhere, eventually managed other teams like the Padres to the World Series in '84. The Alvin Dark took over as manager for the '74 season, and they won the World Series again, their 3rd in a row. But Finley wasn't considered a good guy, just not a good guy. I mean, people put down George Steinbrenner, the way he fired people and how demanding he'd be, but there was a soft side to George Steinbrenner. He would fire someone and then show remorse. Like you'd hear something like him firing one of his secretaries, like just get rid of her. And then he had his people look into, where the secretary's son would be going to college so he could pay for the whole, college experience. Yeah. But Finley wasn't that way. He really, get rid of you, and then that would be it. No remorse, no second thoughts from all I heard.
All right.
To me, I'll go ahead. I'd say this one last thing. It's just, to me, this is the tale of like a empire that just defeated itself from within, starting at the top. This guy was kind of tyrannical. So it just seemed like they had a little more meat on the bone, and it seemed like maybe they could have did a little more of what they had, and he paid these guys. But who knows?
Yeah, maybe like Mac was saying, like we're talking before the show. I don't think they'd win 4 in a row. I think in '75 the Red Sox were better, but maybe in '76 was a down year. The Yankees going to the series. Those A's teams were a little better. I mean, who knows? Maybe they win another World Series. I don't think so, but I can't say it with absolute confidence. If they kept their core together, it's not like they dominated the 3 years they won the World Series. They just got by in '72. Really were facing elimination in '73. I mean, because they won 3 in a row, do we overrate them? Do we call them one of the great teams of all time? Because statistically, they've won 3 World Series in a row. I mean, were they really that good? They were obviously very good if you look at some individual players.
No doubt.
But were they really that great of a team? I mean, as far as an all-time great team, you know, you
I
could
mean,
argue, yes.
they went to 5 ACLSs in a row.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. So let's step and take a look at one of my favorite teams. I mean, I'm a Giants fan. One of my favorite coaches. There he is in the middle of all of them, George Allen and the Over the Hill Gang. And of course, George Allen is a Hall of Fame coach, and he was with the Rams before that. Of course, he had a long coaching career way back in the 50s when he started with the Rams and then went to the Bears, became their defensive coordinator, was so good. In fact, George Halas ended up recruiting him for the Rams. He goes back to the Rams, makes the Rams a contender, kind of gets in a fight with the owner there, ends up with the Redskins. Now, you know how you – and they got a name for the Over the Hill Gang. Now, this is crazy. You know how in the year – you know, you're going up and you're leading up into maybe the Super Bowl and you pick up that veteran. You know, you're a Super Bowl contender and this guy puts you over the top. This veteran on this young team, or in the beginning of the season, you got that one position. For Devontae Adams, right? If one team picks him up that is a contender, this older guy who's like 31 right now may put him over the top. Well, the average age of the Washington Redskins and when they started winning was 31 years old. That was their average age. This is how old this team was. They were full with vets. 71, the Redskins, and they were the Washington Redskins at that time, actually took their draft picks, 5 of their 7, and traded them out so they could get vets. So they were like what the Rams did that last year when they went to the Super Bowl, right? When they had Matt Stafford. They got a bunch of vets. They did hell with the draft picks. I want a team right away. Billy Kilmer was with the Saints at the time. And in 1971, 72, Archie Manning goes to the Saints. Well, the Saints don't need Billy Kilmer anymore, so he goes on and he plays with the Redskins. He brings them over there. And he leads the Skins to back-to-back playoff appearances and then brings them to their first Super Bowl appearances. Check out these trades in 71. They receive 3 linebackers, a defensive tackle, an offensive guard. They pick up Boyd Dowler from the Packers, who won 5 championships, defensive end Vernon Biggs from the Jets, and plus 4 other few vets in August. And like I said, in 71, they improved to 9-4 and 1. In 72, they were 11-3. In 7 years, George Allen had 7 winning records, 5 playoff appearances, and that Super Bowl trip. He was 116-47 with 5 ties. Of course, he's a Hall of Famer, 2-time NFL Coach of the Year. Joined the Rams, I said, in 57. His biggest thing was saying the future is now. He didn't care about next week. He didn't care about next year. And he had some way of he inspired these old players to go out and give them everything they had. Remember, 31 years of age. I think that time the schedule was 14 games. Plus the playoffs, plus the Super Bowl. You know, these guys sucked it up for him, and he had a way in the locker room and a way to inspire him on the field. He'd go, hip, hip, hooray. He'd be in the middle of it, hip, hip, hooray. That's him doing that right now. As you see it, he's yelling, hip, hip, hooray. And these guys bought into this. They loved George Allen. These older guys did. Let's see. In 65 and 67, the Rams were 11-1-2. After they lost to Minnesota, who went on to the Super Bowl in 69, that's when they ended up getting rid of George Allen. And as I said, even with the Redskins, when you get very good as a coach, the owner and GM start trying to tell you what to do, and you don't want to hear it anymore, and you move on. And he went to the USFL and became an analyst for a while. But anyway, George Allen and Over the Hill Gang. Unbelievable team. I loved watching them. I loved watching them play the Cowboys at that time because sometimes they would beat them, and I hated the Cowboys at the time. So anyway,
George Allen was one of the more charismatic coaches in the NFL history. A very good coach, not a great coach, a very good coach. Okay, which is high praise that I'm giving him. he wasn't able to quite get over the top in a number of big games because his specialty was mainly defense and special teams. He was very big on special teams and the importance of it. And his teams normally had good special teams and a really, tough defense. Offensively, he was lacking. He wasn't that imaginative on offense. That's maybe why his teams would get to the brink. They get to the playoffs, but not really be able to get over the top. They lost to the unbeaten Miami Dolphin team in the Super Bowl, and the 14-7 score is deceiving because of the missed field goal that was flubbed when the Dolphins were 14-0 with a few minutes left, and we're about to go up 17-0, but the kick was blocked. There you go, special teams. And George Allen's thing, and it was returned for a touchdown. And the Washington offense was pathetic in that Super Bowl game. There's no other way to put it. I mean, kudos to the Miami defense. Washington really didn't move the ball at all. You mentioned the USFL. He coached the Chicago Blitz. Right. And in 1983, I went to Philadelphia. I drove to Philadelphia to see the Philadelphia Stars play the Chicago Blitz in the semifinals to see who would go to the USFL championship game. And George Allen's team is up 21 points with a little over 10 minutes to go. The problem is it was so darn hot that day. And the Blitz players, their defense wilted in the heat. They couldn't tackle anyone because of heat exhaustion, and the Stars get 3 touchdowns in the last 10 minutes to send it into overtime. And on their first possession in overtime, they get another touchdown. It was a legendary game, but the heat stopped Allen from going to the USFL championship game. I never saw anything like it, guys, where a team fell apart because of the heat. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. Late in the game, you tried to save time on the clock. And I remember being with my friend at the game saying, they should just hand the darn ball off. They're getting 20 yards on every carry. Don't bother passing the ball. And that's what they were doing. They were handing it off and getting chunks to Philadelphia Star. But keep this in mind. George Allen didn't have to deal with the cap. That's why he could make a lot of these deals. Now, if George Allen was alive today and coaching in charge, he would definitely get Devontae Adams, and he would trade a first-round draft pick for Devontae Adams.
And a great point on those special teams, because if you remember, Mark Mosley in 1972 was actually MVP of the National NFC as a field goal kicker, the only one in history, because of Mark Mosley, who kicked like 18 straight. I mean, he had the record at one time. And one other quick thing about George Allen, when he was the Bears defensive coordinator, they beat the Giants 14-10.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
NFC
I didn't know he was the defensive coordinator for the Bears in that '63 championship game.
Yeah, in fact, he left. Cool. He left right after that, and he was going to try after he left the Rams. He talked about going to Chicago. George Halas was having nothing to do with it because he left him to go to the Rams without even letting him know. He just left. So George Halas said, "No, you're not coming back here." Sorry about that.
He was considered, guys. He was considered very sneaky. That he should have been a military guy trying to get information from another country, like a CIA guy or whatever, because he would, they would be paranoid that he would have cameras on other things, and just the way he would try to get every little tiny edge, and I don't know how legal it was. But back with the draft thing, when he got Verlin Biggs, the defensive tackle from the Jets, he gave up a number 1 draft choice, and they asked George Allen, but now you don't have your number 1 draft choice. He said, Verlin's our number 1 draft choice. That's the way he looked at it. He would have gotten Devontae Adams if he was able to fit him in under the cap. He would have given up a number 1 draft choice today and said, Devontae Adams, I'll have him the next 2-3 years or whatever, and he's our number 1 guy. He's ready to step. And he didn't trust rookies. He did not trust rookies. He always wanted older players.
Yeah, and they wanted to be there with him too. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jack. Their young running back, was it Larry Brown, number 43?
I think so. Yeah.
He was 1,000-yard rusher too. I mean, they did have a good running game, but going against a no-name defense in the Super Bowl, Larry Brown wasn't able to move the ball.
Allen was a very good coach. I don't mean to minimize that. The only thing I wish he'd been a little better on the offensive side of the ball. He wasn't the type of coach where they'd open up things with a passing game. Short yardage, grind the ball, play tight defense, win with special teams. He kind of played it a little close to the vest and was very successful. He did everything but win a championship as a head coach. And I wasn't aware, Mac, that he was the defensive coordinator on the Bears that did win, the NFL championship.
One more nugget before you go, Jack, with the Cincinnati Reds. When George Allen wanted to coach the Bears and Hallis said no, you know who the coach was? And this was in 1984. Guess who we picked? Of course, we know Mike Ditka. So that's who ended up coaching the Bears when George Hallis wanted to continue on. So, Jack, we've got the big red machine with all kinds of stuff. Pete Rose is he going to the Hall of Fame? We got players that love him now that used to hate him. There he is, Pete Rose, the all-time hit leader and unbelievable baseball player for Cincinnati.
Yeah, we were talking a little about it last week, and we had a little bit of a disagreement on Johnny Bench, the way he felt about Pete Rose. After Pete Rose passed, Johnny Bench said glowing things. He was interviewed by Dan Patrick. But I do know this. On the HBO documentary that on Pete Rose that was taken not long ago at all, that's airing now, and it's pretty recent, you could even say it, Johnny Bench declined to be interviewed. So, sometimes after someone passes, you have a kind of change of heart, the way you talk about him a little bit.
Of course.
And the way Pete Rose was talking about Johnny Bench on the documentary, you could tell they weren't close. But maybe they were in a good place when all was said and done. Kind of like, James, you relate to Kobe and Shaq. Shaq now will get mad at anyone who would question his relationship that he had with Kobe. Let's face it, it wasn't the best all those years, but they eventually got to a good place, and Shaq praises Kobe all the time now, and I compare that with Bench and Rose, the relationship. And like Al Michaels said, you had two big stars in Cincinnati, different personalities, different egos. Yeah. Sometimes, there could be a tiny bit of unrest there. But the 1970s Big Red Machine, when did they become the Big Red Machine? Well, in 1970, they went to the World Series. And it was supposed to be a pretty even World Series going. And they were playing the Baltimore Orioles, who lost to the Mets the year before. And the Orioles won 108 games the year before. But because they had lost to the Mets, the Orioles weren't given that feeling of favoritism over the Reds. It was thought the series could go anyway. And the Orioles basically dominated that series. Brooks Robinson was outstanding at third base. The Orioles won the first 3 games. The Reds were down 5-3 in something like the 8th inning of the 4th game. They're about to get swept. Lee May hits a 3-run homer. Now it's 3-1. And, there's some hope there for, Cincinnati. But then the Orioles closed them out in Game 5. The next season, they wind up getting the next season in 71, the Pirates go to the World Series. They're not the Big Red Machine yet, but in 72, they get Joe Morgan from Houston. They make a deal. They trade Lee May, their power-hitting first baseman. Big deal. And no one knew what a great deal it was going to be for Cincinnati. And it turned out to be a magnificent trade. And Joe Morgan was one of their core 4, obviously. And a big part of it, Rose, Bench, Perez, Morgan, And like James was saying, they're back in 72 in the World Series. They're playing Oakland. They're favored to win that series. And Sparky Anderson saying, we're going to win in 7 going in. That's my prediction. We're winning in 7. And Sparky was full of it, really full of it. Because if you say you're going to win in 7 and you're up 3-0, you could say, wow, I mean, this is a pleasant surprise. I want my guys to prove my prediction wrong. Then if you lose game 4, 5, and 6, you could say, no problem. I said all along we're going to win in 7.
Right.
You know, and if you fall behind 3-0, and in the Reds' case, they were down 3-1, and Sparky Anderson said, no, I said all along we're going to win in 7. You know, he was full of it, Sparky, with his prediction. But what happened? They nearly did win in 7. Oakland wins the first 2 games of the series in Cincinnati. Cincinnati wins game 3 in Oakland, and then the 4th game, you know, Oakland wins up 3-1, and then the 5th game, Cincinnati wins. Then they're going back to Cincinnati. Cincinnati wins the 6th game. Reggie Jackson was out during that series. Had gotten injured. Okay, so that was a bit of a blow, you know, to Oakland. Their superstar right fielder, who I don't have to tell you about, Reggie Jackson, was out. And in game 7, it's 2-1 in the 9th inning, and the Reds have a man on base. P. Rose is up, and he hits like a hard line drive to the edge of the warning track in left field. He hit it really well. And the moment he hit it, Raleigh Fingers turns around, you know, instinctively, you know, like you could tell a split second of nervousness. Did I give up the game-winning home run? But the ball is caught in left field, and Rose had nothing to be apologetic about. He hit the ball really well, but unfortunately, you know, it was at the edge of the warning track. It didn't go a little further. And so they win the 72 World Series, and a bit of an upset. Except the Big Red Machine didn't quite get it done. And then in 73, they won 99 games, but they're playing the Mets. The Mets team had won 82 games on the season, but the Mets had momentum going. And then even though I put down momentum in baseball, momentum is good if it's taking place at the right time. And if you can't hold on to momentum for too long. Now, don't tell me about the 98 Yankees. If you're an all-time great team, yeah, you can hold it for a year. If you're an all-time great team. But in the even like this season, we see a team with great momentum like the Detroit Tigers. They're going to hit a wall at some point. Maybe not in this series with the Indians, but definitely by the next series, they'll come down to earth. And teams that aren't playing so well, eventually they get it together if they're a good team. But the Mets had all the momentum going on. They came from last place, like 9.5 games down in a weak division to win their division. And then they go against the Big Red Machine in the 73 playoffs. And they beat the Big Red Machine in 5 games, best of 5, 3-2. And that's after the Mets lost game 1. They won 3 or 4. If the Big Red Machine is an all-time great team, you beat that Met team. You don't let them deprive you of going to the World Series. And then the next year, 74, the Dodgers get to the World Series, not the Reds. So what's going on with this Big Red Machine? If you're supposed to be that great, you can't win a World Series? I mean, come on. But that changed in 75. They beat a great Red Sox team in 7 games, and arguably the greatest World Series ever, arguably. And then the next year, 76, the Yankees were coming into their own, but the Reds beat them in 4 straight. And I don't want to hear things, well, some of the games were competitive. It really wasn't one-sided. Bottom line is you swept them 4-0. I don't care if every game was 1-0, you know, and you scored with 2 outs in the 9th inning, the 1 run that won it for you. I don't want to hear it. Bottom line, it's 4-0. And that was basically the last hurrah. In 77 and 78, the Dodgers went to the World Series. But I will say this, when people talk about the Big Red Machine being maybe the greatest team of all time, and they have some supporters, people are basing it on position by position comparisons. And I do have to admit this, if we're going to play that game of taking any other team in my lifetime, just about, okay, and comparing them to the Reds, position by position, everyone comes up short, a little short. I mean, you have Johnny Bench at catcher. Who do you put ahead of Johnny Bench? and you have Tony Perez. Excuse me?
Yogi Berra?
You can, it's arguable. It's arguable. Yeah, sure. But but those Yankee teams were a little before my time. But even if we're to look at those Yankee teams and compare them position to position to the Reds, chances are they're going to come up a little short.
It's close. It's close, Jack. It's close.
Yeah.
It's close. If I got DiMaggio, Mantle.
No, but they have to be Mac. They have to be on the team at the same time.
Well, they were. I mean, for a year or two, right? I mean, you had
DiMaggio with Mantle and DiMaggio's last year, Mantle's first year,
okay.
And neither of them.
I'll give you that.
DiMaggio was past its peak, and Mantle was just starting in the developmental stage.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of home. I still put Mantle against the center fielder. Billy Martin was
Billy
there.
North.
I think
Billy North was with Oakland. I mean, you're talking about Cesar Geronimo.
I'm on the Yankees still. Billy Martin at second. Moose.
Billy Martin didn't compare to Joe Morgan.
In the World Series, he did. He had
one World Series. He didn't compare to Joe Morgan. Are you kidding me?
I'm just going.
World Series.
I'm going
I
position.
think Bucky Dep was better than Derek Jeter. Then he had a big World Series. Bucky Dep was as good as Jeter. Look what he did in the World Series.
Phil Rizzuto. I don't know, Jack. I mean, I think it's close. I think it's close. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying that position is the best. I'm just saying there are a few close teams. Maybe Seattle Mariners. I mean, there's a couple teams that I could put. Maybe
but again, they would come up short. I mean, you have to start considering. Okay, Pete Rose is at third base. Yeah. Those Yankee teams didn't have anyone as good as him at third base. Dave Concepcion was outstanding. Yeah, you can put Phil Rizzuto maybe ahead of him if you want, Second base had no one as good as Joe Morgan. At first base, even the Yankee teams that had Bill Scarin, he wasn't as good as Tony Perez.
True.
And it's hard to put Berra over bench, even though it's arguable. You could do that.
It's close.
Or you could call it a wash.
Yeah.
And then you look at right field. Ken Griffey Jr., would be hitting over 300 and supplying decent defense. And George Forster, not as good a career player, but 52 homers. He was the big bat, with the big red machine for a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's I don't think you could do the 50 Yankees. But even if you want to do the 1998 New York Yankees, that were an all-time great team. I mean, you could say the Yankees were a better team because they had better pitching. I'm just talking about position for position.
Right. So if you went position for position in the Yankees,
let James decide this.
There were a couple.
The 1998 Yankees, James?
A little bit, yes.
There were a couple second basemen that the Yankees.
We got to go position for position, Mac. You're all over the place.
Wait, let me think. Okay, so third baseman, I got A-Rod. Who you got?
Pete Rose. But A-Rod wasn't on the 98 Yankees.
Yeah, all right. So who was it? Was it Brosha? Was it Scott? Yeah, he had a great series. Shortstop.
So you're wait. So you're giving edge to Scott Brosha.
No. Shortstop, I put Derek Jeter in that. And I'll put
Jeter and Dave Concepcion will go with Jeter.
Okay. Second baseman in 98.
Chuck Knobloch and Joe Morgan.
Joe Morgan, easy. First baseman was what, Tito? First baseman
was Tony Perez. You can argue it was close. Close. If you put Tino on the red team and Perez on the Yankee team, they could still be the big red machine with Tino there.
Bernie Williams.
You can argue that was close, but you got to give an edge to Tony Perez over Tino, and I'll tell you why. The hard evidence: Tony Perez is in the Hall of Fame, and Tino isn't.
Not yet.
So we got
Bernie Williams.
What?
Bernie Williams in center field.
Wait. So we give an edge to Perez. Bernie Williams is definitely better than Cesar Geronimo.
Right field, we had. Who do we have at right field? 98. Jack.
Paul O'Neill, Ken Griffey Jr., which is close.
Senior.
I maybe give a little edge to Paul O'Neill. This is me.
I would too.
But it's very close.
I would too. Left fielder, who do we have?
George Foster was better than anyone the Yankees threw out there that year by far.
Was 98? Was that the other Williams? Was that whatchamacallit Williams?
Gerald Williams. Yeah. And I don't remember too much beyond that for some reason. The Yankee left fielder. But so Bench over Posada, Perez over Tino 2-0, Morgan over Knobloch 3-0. Jeter over Concepcion 3-1. Rose over Brocious 4-1. O'Neill and Griffey is basically a wash, but I'll give you Paul O'Neill if I want. Even though you could easily go to Griffey on that. That's 4-2. Bernie in center 4-3. Foster there in left field 5-3. So even there, the Yankees keep it relatively close.
Right.
Only losing 5-3, and the Yankees had better pitching. So to me, the Yankees were a better team because the Reds had a good bullpen, but the Yankees had great middle relievers. They had Mariano, and I think they had better starting pitching. So the 1998 Yankees, like I said, I think were better than the Big Red Machine. But the perception of the Big Red Machine being the greatest team of all time in people's minds would be a position by position comparison. That's what people get caught up in.
Right. I would agree. And I would think maybe even a couple teams in the 2000s of the Boston Red Sox, Mike, I mean, the 75 Red Sox match up with them greatly. I mean, that was the position too. I mean, you got Carlton Fisk at catcher.
You're always going to come up short, but my point is the Reds had 4 Hall of Famers, so you're always going to come up short. Carlton Fisk is going to be rated behind Johnny Bench. Johnny Bench is better than Carlton Fisk, as great as Fisk was.
Not by much, but if you talk Yastrzemski, you talk Jimmy Rice, Jim Rice. You talk about the outfield, Dwight Evans. I think Dwight Evans was there.
Dwight Evans was in the more like the the 80s, 86 was there. But the point again is, you might say not by much. No one would take Carlton Fisk over Johnny Bench. No one. Okay. And this is no disrespect to Carlton Fisk, who's a great player. If you had every GM in baseball needed a catch and they could have one of them and they were the same age, do you think one GM would say, I want Carlton Fisk instead of Johnny Bench?
I think if Carlton Fisk was with the Big Red Machine, they still would have been the Big Red Machine. How's that? I think he's maybe. He's that
maybe.
close.
Okay. Oh yeah. I'm not saying no. Like we said, if Tino Martinez had been there instead of Tony Perez, you could have slotted him in. I mean, Carlton Fisk is an all-time great catcher, but Johnny Bench is just that little level, basically ahead.
Yeah. You got a point, Jack. I mean, you got a point. If you're looking position for position, that's maybe why they're hailed as such a great team, because they sure not World Series wise are they a great team. They even fall behind the Oakland A's.
They won 2 in a row. Listen, they won 2 in a row, so that makes you a great team. You get a lot of teams in baseball that didn't accomplish as much as they should have, but they're remembered, like the '86 Mets. The Mets won 1 World Series, and we could say that's all they ever won. They should have maybe won more. And the Brooklyn Dodgers only won 1 World Series, and they had great players, the Dodgers. You could argue the Dodgers was good as the Yankees if you want, but the Yankees usually always found a way to beat them.
Yeah.
The 90s Braves, too.
The
Yeah,
Atlanta Braves is a good
great
point by James
Great
when
point.
they had that great pitching staff, Smokes, Glavine,
I
Maddox.
guess,
Only won,
I guess,
World Series.
I guess it's sort of like football, right? You have some great quarterbacks who never won a Super Bowl or won one Super Bowl compared to other quarterbacks that weren't as personally, their stats weren't as good, but they won more Super Bowls, so we give them extra credit there, right? And one thing about baseball, the pitching staff has got to be the most important position player on the team, Jack, right? So you have to consider that when you're talking position for position.
Let you make a good point. Let me get off that for 1 second because the baseball playoffs, this division round is beginning today.
Right.
As a Yankee fan, because of pitching, I am very nervous about this Kansas City Royals series. I think it's going to full 5 games, and I am nervous about no. You talk about momentum at the right time. The Royals got momentum at the right time. I think it's gone 5 games.
There's no such thing. There is no such thing as momentum in baseball. As we talked about on our Friday show, it's that some teams just have that feeling that they can win no matter what because it's up to the pitchers. The pitchers control the momentum. Derek Cole comes out there, wins game 1. And I guess we're going to go with one of our idiot pitchers, but Hill's going to win a game. Our rookie Hill's going to win a game, and then we just piece it together for another one. I ain't worried about that.
I'm not worried. If the Yankees win this series, they're going to beat the Tiger Guardian winner. That series concerns me less, but this series scares the heck out of me with Kansas City. I think it's gone 5 games. Maybe because I'm a Yankee fan, I'm going to pick the Yankees to squeak it out in 5, but it's very dangerous series that I can see the Yankees losing. I could see the Yankees losing this in 4 games even.
Hey, when we started this early, I said I predicted the Yankees in the World Series. Of course, I wanted to keep my Yankee card. I didn't know if they were going or not. I really didn't. But it's a surprise.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
In the very beginning, I got the sheet, Jack. I got the sheet.
Okay, you did. I don't remember what.
Yeah. It was an iffy pick though. It was like I didn't know who else to pick.
I don't remember who you picked. My picks. I always come clean. I mean, I picked the Braves over the Astros in the World Series this year, and they both got eliminated quickly in the playoffs. So
I think I picked like the Brewers or something. I got to look back. I picked the NL. I was terrible. I was terrible. I don't even know. I think it was the Brewers or maybe the Reds. I picked. I don't know. I got to go back and look, but I know it was a terrible pick. So anyway, folks, we're not going to be able to get to our last topic today. We get involved and we start talking about stories and stuff, and that's good, right? We start talking about all the stuff that happens. So next week maybe we'll throw in the Knicks. Maybe we won't, but we'll have a few more great topics to talk about. I love people coming in here and giving their comments. Thanks, folks, for tuning in and watching us go back in memory lane. And remember, the past is what makes the present, which makes the future. So everything changes, stays the same in the end. We just get older. I think everything else stays the same. Is what I think happens. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow, the big football show. Tune in for that, and that will be me, Mac, James, Sonia, Keith Engel will be in, and hopefully the Philly sports guy isn't crying in his beer because the Philadelphia Phillies lost, and he won't show up. Hopefully he shows up. We'll see what happens. Folks, have a great Saturday. If you're going out tonight, stay out of